I know my own children have come home and said it's very eerie being in the schools right now.
You send your kids to go to school to be safe, and here this happens in school. Now what do you think of schools?
One thing that went through my mind was, I mean, you never know what can happen, what's gonna be around the next corner.
April 20th, 1999, two seniors at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado shot and killed 12 classmates and a teacher, then killed themselves. At least 20 other students were hurt. Back then, it was the worst school shooting anyone had seen. Here in the Capital Region, people struggle to understand why it happened. Karen Lehan reports.
Right around the corner, right in the hall, somebody started shooting people.
All eyes focused on a town in Colorado that until today, most had never heard of. After all of this, the obscure city will be hard to forget. Charles O'Hearn has 2 kids and says the buck stops with the parents.
There's no licensing requirement to have children, unfortunately. So any knucklehead can have as many kids as they like, raise them any way they please. I suppose the only answer is education.
Education for the mother and father on how to parent before they take the baby home from the hospital.
And themselves.
John Wagner grew up in New York City.
That society could drive someone to that point, that's what really disturbed me the most.
He says metal detectors in schools isn't such a bad idea after all. He struggles to understand.
I would just want to know, like, what was going through their minds. I mean, like, we've all been picked on, like everyone's had that in their lives, but what would push them to the point to take hostage the whole school?
This dad watched and explained it to his 12-year-old son, Devin.
That's the world that we live in, and you know, you hope that it doesn't happen to somebody or to them on a local basis.
There's really no point in worrying where we live.
Unfortunately, no one can guess whether it will happen again or where. Karen Lehan for News Channel 13, AM Live.
In the meantime, then Governor George Pataki called on New Yorkers to come together and stop a similar tragedy from happening here.
This is not the time for politics or partisanship. This is not the time for pointing fingers or passing blame. This is the time for us to come together as New Yorkers and as parents, put aside political differences, and work to achieve the greatest possible safety in our schools for our children.
College of St. Rose students studying to be teachers suddenly had a new concern far beyond basic education.
Clearly, yesterday, I think, pointed out to you, perhaps better than I ever could, that yes, you will have to deal with these.
They spent the next day having a very frank discussion about how they would handle something similar in their own classrooms.
My immediate response was, you need to get a major team in, some kind of crisis prevention team outside of the school to help these children, because there's no school principal, teacher, one-on-one that can handle this issue on their own. I wouldn't even know where to start.
Most Capital Region kids were on spring break when the shooting happened, but it was still top of mind.
Just thought that I didn't want it to happen where I go to school.
And one thing that went through my mind was, I mean, you never know what can happen, what's gonna be around the next corner.
A Troy teen turned to music and dedicated a song to people in Colorado, his small way of trying to help when many felt helpless.
Adam began composing when he was 10 years old, when he wrote the song for his 5th grade graduation. But it was this song that came to mind when he saw the pictures on his television screen unfolding of the tragedy in Littleton.
A youth group in Latham held a service to remember fellow members who belonged to the same group through a branch in Colorado.
The telltale thing was the story, you know, where the guy walks into the thing and says, who believes in God? And then the person that stands up, they kill.
And that one girl that was shot, that stood up and said, you know, yes, I believe in Jesus. That's just complete role model to me, completely. I just admire her. I like to think that I have enough guts to do that.
Eventually, it was back to school for kids who now had a new worry. Carmen Dexter reports.
Everyone's just so shocked about what happened and how people can feel like this. It was just disgraceful. It was disgusting what they did.
Caitlin Foley is an 8th grader at Philip Livingston Middle School in Albany. She says her class briefly discussed the Columbine shooting, but it hasn't changed how she feels about school.
Like, I feel safe in this school, and I know that I just have a confidence that it really wouldn't happen here, but that's what they said, so.
Many of the students returning to class in Albany watched the horror in Colorado unfold. They saw students much like themselves, shot down, left dead or injured. Most watched the coverage with a parent.
She asked me my reaction to it, and I told her I thought it was tragic and that I didn't think it could really happen in our school, but our school was pretty safe.
Governor Pataki wants to make sure it doesn't happen in New York schools. His proposal gives teachers and principals more authority to remove disruptive students and makes it a felony to possess a firearm on school grounds.
There's not one bill or one particular change we can make that's going to make overnight our schools safe and our communities safer. It is a whole chain of steps that have to be taken.
Parents and school leaders in the capital region quickly met to try to figure out what to do next. Many procedures talked about at this Saratoga Springs meeting shortly after Columbine are ones we still use today. Added security, lockdown drills, crisis intervention, and more. Sadly, new names have been seared into our brains since then. Sandy Hook Elementary, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, Robb Elementary School, and countless others. It's a sobering reminder that the fight to prevent these tragedies continues 25 years later. For more coverage of past news events, head to our News Channel 13 YouTube page and click on News Vault 13. For now, opening News Vault 13, I'm Rachel Teedy.